Welcome back to Data Dragon. As you know, we are working on ADF complete end-to-end playlist, and this is the part 2 of the playlist. And in this video, we will talk about the core building blocks of ADF. So before even diving into the building blocks definitions, let's see how the architecture of ADF is. So this is a simple pipeline over here where you want data from blob to ADLS migration, and for that we are using a simple copy activity. And so this is blob storage is a source and ADLS gen 2 is the target. So if you have to transfer the data from blob to ADLS, you don't directly do it, you just create a link service which connects the source location to the ADF, I mean to the copy activity, and it creates a data set where all the data is read and all the data will be shown as a data set, and then same applies to the target. So the target location also linked via link service, and then it creates a data set. So the copy happens from data set to data set. So this is just a simple pipeline, and now let's see what actually pipeline is. So pipeline may contain more than a single activity. It contains Databricks notebook, Synapse elements, and many more. So let's see. um, so pipeline supports sequential execution, parallel execution, branching, error handling, and parameters and variables, and scheduling via triggers. And a pipeline is the workflow, like it is like the orchestration part, that by creating pipeline you orchestrate which task to happen next. So this is just a definition, we'll be learning more in the practical in shortly. So activities, so there are many activities like data movement activities, namely copy activity, and data transformation activities like mapping data flows, databricks notebooks, and store procedures, and control activities like if condition, switch for each, wait, set variables, append. So this is just an outline explanation, and we will be discussing more about the activities in, I think, we'll be discussing in the module 4. So, and the parameters and all in module 5, and of course about the integration runtimes in the next video. But for now, I'll just give a brief explanation about what they are. And after the sorry, after the activities, we will see data sets. So data sets nothing but it's just a representation of the data in that particular location. So example, CSV file in ADL is a SQL table, a folder of for JSON files, and a Parquet dataset. So dataset tell where to find the data and what the schema looks like and what format the data is stored in. So they are pointers, they are just like a pointers to the data. Just like I say, they are like a image of how the data looks, and this is where the copy happens and the activity happens. So, and now the link service is nothing but a connection to the data store. Like ADF established the connection via this, and like link service is for, we have link service for Azure storage and Azure SQL, Snowflake, REST APIs, Databricks, and link service of course has authentication details and endpoints, secret keys, and connection configurations. And now integration runtime. This is most important element or aspect of any ADF, because so ADF is run on Azure, but the source, how to trigger the source, like how to give that compute power so the ADF can access the source. So it is like a, just like for example, you're running a Databricks pipeline, you have a compute, like you have some kind of energy to uh, run that particular notebook or something. So this integration runtime is nothing but that compute engine, that compute power to the source and the target location. So you can use Azure Integration Runtime if you are using any cloud to cloud migration, and it is fully managed by Azure, and no servers to manage, and supports 90% activities, and most, like just like I said, most cloud to cloud operations. And self-hosted integration runtimes is like you will host in your own on-premises locations. So usually, maybe in this tutorial videos, I might download that in my own laptop, but in actual work you will download in an Azure or like another VM, where, because you should not do anything in your system in an actual uh, company or an actual work environment, because even if you're not there, it should still be runnable. So it should be able to run you should not create a dependency on your system. So we usually use a VMs, and we install the self-hosted runtimes over there, and we trigger we run them, and that's how we perform on-prem to cloud migrations. And SSIS integration runtime is, I never use this personally, but this is mainly used for a lift and shift for mainly for SSIS packages. And now coming to the data flows. So mapping data flows are the visual ETL engines. Like Spark is used under the hood, so it's used for filtering, joins, aggregations, low-level transformation, and SCD implementation, schema drift handling, and a data flow is ADF version of SSIS data flow task and Spark transformations. It runs a Spark cluster automatically managed by Azure. So just like I said, any uh, element or entity in the cloud needs a compute, and for data flow, the compute is managed again by the Azure. And now cloud execution, Azure integration runtime. Like I said, this is managed completely by Azure. Again, it has self-hosted integration runtime used when data is inside a private network or on premises. And coming to the link service and dataset, we also talked about it before, but now let's see the authentication methods. Of course, mostly all the wherever you find ADF, so mostly you'll find key vault. Key vault is a basic fundamental thing where you can find it in mostly any service, this particular authentication type. So basically in Key Vault, what it's like, you create another but a separate service, and you just put all your secrets over there, and you can just connect it, and you can just use that particular secrets over there. And managed identity, which is passwordless authentication. ADF authenticates using its own identity and used for connection to storage like SQL, key vaults, etc. And this is the most recommended method for secure protection systems. So SAS token and time limited access and common for file transfer used for partner integrations. And SQL authentication, you'll use user and password connection string and work with Azure SQL and SQL Server. Not preferred in production unless Key Vault stores the password. So meaning in development phase you can just directly drop in your password and all, but in actual production you have to use Key Vault, which is the best practice. And for production you use managed identity, MSI. And now coming to data set schemas, parameters, and dynamic paths. So parameters and all we'll be discussing in another video in detail. But for now, schema is, the structure of the data and the hierarchy of the data. So dataset can either import schema from structured files, allow schema drift only for the data flows, and read schema at the runtime. So parameters are basically, you will have a lot of parameters, some for pipeline parameters and some for the activity parameters. Parameters are nothing but a fixed values which will be same throughout the entire pipeline, whereas you can also find variables are dynamic and they're not fixed throughout the pipeline, they can vary for each step. And dynamic paths, common patterns, folder per day, like folder per hour, folder per. So dynamic file names, meaning it uh, accepts dynamically any name or structure, but that once the dynamic is read, that will be constant for throughout the pipeline. Example, let's see in this pipeline, this is one of the project where I created a source folder path. So this reads um, the folder path from the trigger output dynamically, meaning it does not be a fixed and it changes from trigger to trigger, because for a different file we will be generating the triggers a different source folder path, and also it reads all that dynamically, but it stays constant until the end of the entire pipeline runs. So that is the main difference between a pipeline and a variable. Pipeline stays fixed even though it reads dynamically. Both variables and pipelines both read data dynamically, but where parameter stays constant throughout the entire pipeline, whereas variables may vary for each execution of, and the file formats and compression times it accepts like Avro, ORC, Excel, binary, and Parquet, JSON, CSV. So I've mostly worked on Excel, Parquet, JSON, and CSV. I rarely worked on any other. And compression types, it supports Snappy for the Parquet and Zip and Deflate and Bzip too. Yeah, that's it for this uh, theoretical part. And let's see how what we have pipelines and data flows and what are the activities and all. So coming to the pipeline, it's very simple to create a pipeline. New pipeline, you can just name it, give a description. Always make sure you give a description in actual development, because people, while you're working with team, people will know why you created this pipeline. And these are the parameters, or these are called like pipeline parameters. You just need to click on the, for example, you just need to click on the empty space, and you can just find the parameters and variables over here. Coming to here, you can just add a new parameter and variables. You can just add a new variable and settings. Congruency, number of simultaneous pipelines run that are fired, and elapsed time metric. This will emit a metric in Azure Monitor for long running pipelines beyond specific time frame. Format is like um, and the output, it shows the output of that pipeline. And concurrency is like how many simultaneous runs that are fired, meaning uh, each pipeline, if does it has to run parallelly for multiple files, or process one after the other, or I mean in a single run. So now let's see the activities over here. So we have a copy activity and we have a data flow. Or data flow, you can just go and create a new data flow over here, and here you can just add a source options and projection optimization, like single partition, use current partitioning, or you can just set partitioning. You can just uh, create different partitions based on the keys and fixed range. And inspect, this is to just once you have the data, you can just do it and to preview the data. So you can create a lot of uh, transformations over here. You can just join, let's say you have a different sources and you want to join, and you can also so source one and source two, you can just select which join type you need. And you can also use fuzzy matching. Joins based on similarity of the column values only applicable for a string type column comparison. And join condition also you can mention, which is completely no code way. And optimization, like do you want any broadcast join, or is it like auto or fixed? Auto meaning the data flow engine will automatically decide when to broadcast and when to not. So broadcast, um, so broadcast join is where the smaller table is copied to every node in that particular cluster, so that the execution happens very fast. You can just skip the shuffling, and you can optimize, and you can get a faster data processing over there. And use concurrent partitioning. Again, you have single partitioning, set partitioning. You can just have a different partitionings over here. And again, inspect, you can just inspect the source and data if everything is inconsistent. And we will perform a detailed data flows later, but this is just to show how the entire tool is. So in properties, you can name it, and per query you can directly create in the pipeline, or you can externally create a new data set. So let's see, we can create a data set from RDS for SQL Server, for Oracle, Redshift, S3, and Apache Impala, and CosmoDB, blob storage, and a lot of sources it supports. Also REST API and web, from web as well, and PostgreSQL, Shopify, Snowflake, Spark. So this is the beauty of ADF. It just supports maybe three, so more than maybe 100 sources. So now change data capture over here. So new CDC preview. So change data capture is where the data is, this is not a one-time run. Let's say you are performing a let's say data that changes every week, so you have to update. So it captures if any change in the source, and then it triggers. So let's deep dive into more. I just give you what a change data captures, meaning like if anything, it captures when there is a data change. Yeah, let's see the pipeline once again. Yeah, so if we create a data flow over here, we can just also add it. So data flow one, this is how we can add it. So let's say you have the copy activity, and from a different sources you can just create different sources over here, and you can just connect, or you can just, of course this is also supposed to different sources, you can also do that as well over here. But let's say you have multiple places and you want to have a you know interchangeably, you want to use, you can use data flows in pipeline, or you can use activities combined with data flows. So you can do a lot of stuff over here. So just like I said, yeah, for the move and transform, you have copy data and data flow. Data flow, like I said, you can create multiple multiple transformations like conditional split if exist, then something runs, and union and lookup and derived column. You can also have a select to select a particular group of data, something aggregate, and sort, filter, assert. So you can do a lot of stuff, and you can combine, like you can integrate, like call this whatever the pipeline you built in this pipeline, I mean this data flow in this pipeline. So you have a lot of freedom and lot of options to create the data pipelines. Now in case Synapse, you have a Spark jobs and notebooks, and this is for data explorer, and this is for Azure functions, and you can also connect an Azure function. You just need to, in settings you have to link it. And now let's see what does a link service looks like. You'll give a name, like I said, you always make sure you give a description, and like enter your subscription, like what subscription you have, and your app URL, and authentication method. For the functions, you have system assigned managed identity, or an anonymous or service principals, or you can also use key vault. So let's remove this, and let's see the copy activity for the source. And to create a source data set, let's say I have to create a blob, and let's say it is a CSV format delimited text, and I would select, and I'll create a new link service, and you select your subscription and storage account name and authentication type. You can anonymously connect, and account key, SaaS URI, service principal, system assigned managed identity, user assigned managed identity. Then you can also have a parameters for that. So coming to here, so in this you can just see we gave parameters in at a pipeline level and also at the source level. So because what you're trying to do in this particular pipeline, you can find a full video in uh, my YouTube channel. So what we are doing is we are triggering this. So this is how we have a triggers, and you can just create triggers anytime you want. And we are currently using this particular trigger. What it does is it also accepts some, it also has some parameters within it. Let's find it in shortly. So what it does is it connects to the source. So whenever a new data enters, when blob created, it gets triggered. And for now we can just skip it. And now let's, this is where we add the parameters. And what the parameters meaning is it gives source, it gives the source folder path from the trigger body, because trigger sends a message, and within the body we can just find what folder, what is the folder path the data is added, and what is the file name. And from there we capture them at the pipeline level, and this is where we will get the values from that trigger. And from here it will be sent to the source, so that we will be copying that particular file, and in the sync we'll be pasting by changing it into Parquet. So in copy activity we'll see what we have name, description, activity, active state, so meaning like if it is active or deactivated, and timeout, like how long it should run. So the minimum is 10 and the maximum is somewhere around 7 days, I guess. Yeah, retries, like how many number of times it has to retry, and retry interval, like what is the gap between each retry. And secure output and input, meaning you don't find the input and output in the logs. And the source and sync and sync, and this is one of the most important uh, part, mapping. So make sure CSV may support the blank spaces, but Parquet doesn't support any blank spaces. So you should always make sure you have underscores. And if you want to rename any of this part based on the business analyst provided data model and based on the client, so you can do it over here. For example, if you want to rename lat as latitude, you can just do that over here. And setting maximum data integration, degree of copy parallelism, meaning specify the degree of parallelism that data loading would use and data consistency verification. When selecting this option, copy activity will do additional data consistency verification between source and destination stores after data movement. The verification includes file size check and checksum verification for binary files and row. I We also have fault tolerance and skip incompatible rows. If the data has some inconsistent rows, we can also skip from here and skip missing files. We can do that too, and skip forbidden files. We can do that too. This is how we uh, handle the faulted rows and that, and enable logging. If we enable logging, we can also see which files are faulted, and we can just use that. But it will be charged us for 0.25 USD for an hour. So let's skip that for now. And user properties over here. This is a typical copy activity looks like, and this is notebooks. Like I said, you can connect notebooks and all, and Databricks you can connect notebooks, jar, Python, and another job, and data like analytics, and you can just select u SQL. And for the general, you have append variable, delete, execute pipeline, execute SSIS package, on fail what to do, and get metadata, and lookup activity, and store procedure script, and set variables like I said, validation, webhook, wait, and HD Insight. You have Spark, streaming, Pig, MapReduce, and Hive. And integration conditionals, you have filter, for each, if condition, switch, until, and machine learning. You have, of course, machine learning execution notebook. Sorry, pipeline, Power Query. You have a Power Query over here. So, um, depending on the use case, you'll not use all of them in a single pipeline, but based on, for example, you have from on-prem to cloud migration, you use sometimes you use for each, and you also use lookup in that case to look up if there is any new data existed, or for each new data you will run the pipeline one after the other. It's basically, if you have multiple files, for each helps us to run the pipeline for each of that file, and if condition switch. And you can also orchestrate based on if the on success or on complete or on failure, and this is on skip. So that's pretty much it for this video. Before that, let's see also the monitor tab. You can see the pipeline runs and trigger runs, and integration runtime and data flow debug, metrics analytics, and you can just manage whatever you created integration runtimes and purview. And also you can connect like mount with a fabric over here. Git configuration, like I said, you can also um, to maintain that CI/CD and version controlling, you can connect the Git repository for this. These are the credentials, and yeah, that's it for this video. Thank you for watching. See you in the next one. In the next one, we'll be discussing about um, integration runtimes. What are the different integration runtimes we can find? So that's it for now. Thank you.